Hello friends, welcome for joining us here today. I'm Jim Grant, this is Beyond the News. Our website is beyondthenews.co.uk. This show is being pre-recorded in June and airing, I believe, on July the 3rd. If you're in Eastbourne tonight, you can come down, see me live, perform some comedy. I'll be doing some political stuff down at the BYOB, B-Y-O-B, Build Your Own Burger. It's all... they sort of create their own burgers and use food from local suppliers and all that kind of stuff, rather than the mishmash stuff you get on the high street, proper big juicy burgers. I'll be performing down there, comedy night tonight down in Eastbourne. Do come along if you're in the area. Coming up on today's show, we're going to carry on from last week's show, looking at Dr. Graham Hancock's theories on consciousness. And we're also going to, before that, look at quantum physicists' theories on consciousness, which I find incredibly enlightening. The stuff that they've discovered in the 90s, which I think should be readily available to everyone. It's from a documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know? I'll say that again, What the Bleep Do We Know? A documentary which it presents results of experiments and draws conclusions. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all the conclusions that they've drawn, but I want to present to you today the results of the experiments and let you make up your own minds and draw your own conclusion, which I think are fascinating. And then listen to Graham Hancock. Dr. Graham Hancock will continue the interview that we started with him last week. But coming up first, this is a show for people of all races, religions, colours and creeds, sexual discriminations, all sorts that believe in truth, freedom, liberty, and that government shouldn't treat us like criminals for no reason. And that the government is far beyond its remit now, and they need to remember that they are our public servants, not our public masters, and stop trying to turn the Western world into a giant prison camp with an erosion of our civil liberties, constantly taking our money for causes and wars that we don't agree with. And one of the reasons that these things can happen is often when you get a deep corruption, a deep tyranny like we're moving into now, you often find that corrupt people don't want to grass up other corrupt people because they can get blackmailed themselves. So often the sort of person that you would want investigating something is someone just as dodgy as you, because you're more likely to be able to get away with your crime if you've committed it then. And that's what I often think what we've got here in government. And listeners to this show will know many examples. You can check out beyondthenews.co.uk for our previous shows. Check out the Spreaker link, they're all on there. So here's an example of why I've got a problem with our current political system, and you should bear this in mind as well for when you've got certain ministers being involved looking at tax scandals. My point is, if you know you've done wrong, the best way you can get an investigation through is to appoint someone as head of an investigation that you've got dirt on, so you can pull some strings and get away with light charges. So with that in mind, I'd like to go to this clip. It's from Fox News, and it's about how Obama has appointed Attorney General Eric Holder to investigate himself. This isn't a joke. This really isn't a joke. And in view of all the illegal things that have been going on both sides of the Atlantic, I want you to give an example. This is an American example of how corruption can really fester and get to the point of absolute ridiculousness.
And in the meantime, we have this alert for you as well. Did Eric Holder personally sign off on the investigation into Fox News? That is a big question this morning, as the president calls on the Justice Department to investigate itself. That's also getting a lot of attention. We start a brand new hour now of America's Newsroom. Glad to have you with us, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning at home. There are many new questions this morning on the involvement of the Attorney General. The Justice Department seizing telephone records from the AP and a Fox News correspondent, James Rosen. The president saying that he is troubled by the leak investigations.
I've raised these issues with the Attorney General, who shares my concerns. So he's agreed to review existing Department of Justice guidelines governing investigations that involve reporters. And he'll convene a group of media organizations to hear their concerns as part of that review.
So then, Doug McElway leads our coverage on this, the review, the investigation, what happens next. Do we know that the Attorney General signed off on this search warrant?
Bill, that would normally be the process. The Department of Justice guidelines are really quite clear about subpoenaing members of the media. Here's what those guidelines say, at least in part. Quoting, "The Attorney General's authorization is normally required before the issuance of any subpoena to a member of the news media or for the telephone toll records of a member of the news media." You might recall that in the case of the DOJ obtaining the telephone records of the Associated Press, Eric Holder said that he recused himself. In an interview with NPR in mid-May, he was much less specific about whether he signed off on the search warrant for James Rosen.
I'm not sure how many of those cases that I have actually signed off on. I take them very seriously. I know that I have refused to sign a few, pushed a few back for modifications.
If the NBC report is true, we have no reason to doubt it, it puts the administration in a very peculiar place. The president has asked his attorney general, as we just saw, for a review, meaning, in effect, the attorney general will have to review the attorney general.
Wow. So the U.S. attorney who sought the search warrant, Doug, against James Rosen, our colleague, is defending his decision. What is he saying?
The U.S. attorney, he is the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Ronald C. Machen, put out a statement earlier this week, and in it he said, quote, "We did not wiretap the phones of any reporter or news organization, nor did we monitor or track the phone calls of any reporter's parents. No records were obtained from the computer servers of any news organization," end quote. But that statement omitted the fact that emails from Rosen's personal Gmail account were obtained, as were details from his cell phone and his parents' phone indicating who they called, what calls were received, as well as time and duration of the calls.
And we had on last show Alex Jones explain how pretty much all communications are monitored under the, and given the right to do so, by the 1996 Telecommunications Act. So, which he was called loon for years for pointing that out. But now it's all coming, chickens coming home to roost, and it's all going up to the top level of government. But don't worry, the top level of government, they're going to investigate themselves. You can trust them, right?
Yesterday, Fox News chairman and CEO Roger Ailes weighed in on the controversy, messaging all Fox News employees, quote, "The administration's attempt to intimidate Fox News and its employees will not succeed, and their excuses will stand neither the test of law, the test of decency, nor the test of time." He added, "We will not allow a climate of press intimidation unseen since the McCarthy era to frighten any of us away from the truth." Bill?
Not a high crime, a high honor. Doug, thank you. Doug McElway in Washington. Martha.
Well, President Obama also saying that he is extremely concerned about the targeting of journalists. Here he is.
Troubled by the possibility that leak investigations may chill the investigative journalism that holds government accountable.
Now, this is being pre-recorded in June, but the story of Mr. Snowden has just broke on the whistleblower of how, because this was actually done, this video was actually uploaded before the whole Snowden thing comes in. So they said, don't worry, we're not going to go for any whistleblowers. Whistleblowing is great. And then there was a whistleblower about a week later, and right, we need to deal with this person. So it's just lie after lie after lie after lie. And I don't know what's happened to Snowden currently, as of recording this in mid-June, June the 12th. People are not sure quite where he's gone, but he's blown the whistle and done a runner. So this will be being aired July the 3rd, I know. So hopefully we'll know more about it by then. But I just wanted to point out that it's just lie after lie after lie. And it's getting to the point of ridiculous now where they say, OK, maybe we did lie, but don't worry, we'll investigate ourselves to see if we did. It's just nonsense, and the system cannot go on like this on either side of the Atlantic, really, because although this specific scandal has happened in America, there's been numerous scandals in the UK, and people just don't trust the top ends of the politicians anymore, and I don't blame them, and that's why I'm doing this show, to point out stuff that, in the end of the day, whatever you think of WikiLeaks, I'd like to make out this point. If all the mainstream media was doing their job, there'd be no WikiLeaks. Does that make sense? WikiLeaks would not exist if the mainstream media were leaking everything themselves. WikiLeaks has come to exist because the mainstream media has omitted so much. But now it's starting to cover a few things. I think they're starting to see just how bad the tyranny's got, and the mainstream media is waking up, which is why Fox News articles like this come about. Let's continue with it.
The president says he's worried about that, and a lot of people are asking a lot of questions this morning. Chris Wallace is the anchor of Fox News Sunday and joins me now. Chris, I mean, it's an actions versus words question for the administration on this to some extent.
Yeah, and let me begin with the question of whether or not Eric Holder signed off. Now, I don't know, and the only reporting we have is from NBC News, which has pretty good sources at the Justice Department. They say he did sign off. Here's the reason to think that he might have in this case as opposed to the AP case. In the AP case, he was, in fact, one of the subjects of investigation. He was interviewed by the FBI as to whether or not he had leaked some of the information in the AP story. There was never any suggestion that he was interviewed or a target of that investigation, and so there would seem to be no logical reason why he wouldn't have signed off in the James Rosen case. There's no reason he would have recused himself. So I think it's more than likely that he did get involved in that, and that, of course, raises the question as to the president now giving him this order to review the Justice Department guidelines, to meet with media groups, and to report back by mid-July. And it does seem to be a case of, you know, Eric Holder will investigate what Eric Holder did.
I mean, how can you do that? And what comes next? I mean, what avenue would there be to say that doesn't wash? Well,
you know, the media, that's one of the reasons it's so important that there be no efforts to fetter, to prevent us from doing what we do. So that's what we're doing right now in expressing concerns about that. Obviously, I think there are going to be some people in Congress.
Oh, don't know what happened there. YouTube stopped. Let's see if we can find it back again.
We're doing right now in expressing concerns about that. Obviously, I think there are going to be some people in Congress. We'll be talking about it on Fox News Sunday. You know, this whole question as to if they're going to be investigating reporters and getting their phone records and getting their emails and perhaps their parents' phone records. You know, I suspect that you're going to see other people putting pressure on the administration, not only not to do it, but also if you're going to have an investigation, should it be an independent group that investigates it? I don't know that this rises to the level of a special prosecutor, because in this case they had an affidavit, they went to a judge and they got approval, so I'm not sure that it's illegal in any way, but it certainly raises questions about propriety.
I mean, it's possible that Eric Holder may say, and I'm just putting this out there, that you know, it was procedure, that yes, he did sign off on this. But the question of the criminal charges that are part of this as well, the aider, abettor, and co-conspirator part of this, that has raised a lot of eyebrows in even in a more significant way, and whether or not he knew about that part of this and encouraged it or, you know, moved that along, is also a big question, isn't it, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, no reporter has been charged with a crime for receiving information, for doing his job. I mean, you know, you can argue whether we should or we shouldn't, but the fact is that reporters don't take an oath, are not bound by these laws. It's the people who get the classified information inside the government. Now, in fairness, I don't know that there was ever any indication that they were going to criminally charge James Rosen. There was a lot of very inflammatory language in the Justice Department documents about aider, abettor, co-conspirator, flight risk, all of which, quite frankly, is nonsense. But that was really an effort just simply to get the search warrant from the judge. So it was a high-flown rhetoric and probably inflammatory rhetoric, but I don't think that James Rosen was ever the subject of a criminal investigation.
All right. I know you're going to be talking about the IRS story as well, and we've learned today that Lois Lerner is on paid leave for you know, who knows how long that's going to go on. You know, do you think it's likely that Congress will work hard to bring her back to that table again?
Oh, there's no question she'll be brought back to the table. Darrell Issa, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, has said that he made a mistake when he dismissed her, and that he believes that when she made her statement that she was not guilty of any crime, she waived her Fifth Amendment rights. Now, I will tell you, there are a lot of independent legal experts in this town, and they deal with these questions of people taking the Fifth Amendment, who say that kind of a general statement of I did nothing wrong doesn't waive the Fifth Amendment right. Ultimately, this is going to go to a judge. I mean, how this would play out is Lois Lerner would come back. She would be asked these questions. She would refuse to answer them. She would be held in contempt, and then they would have to go to a judge who would have to rule whether or not. So this is going to take some time.
And there's some thinking that if that happens, she would not be allowed to accept that paid leave. So we'll see how it all develops. Chris, thank you very much. We'll be watching this Sunday, of course, when you will be having.
There you go. That was uploaded on May 24th, 2013, that video, and this show's been recorded 12th of June, going out July 3rd. So I'm just want to give you some breaking news. When I say breaking, in the last few days. This is from the 12th of June, last updated at 18:30. So it is breaking, because I'm recording this about sort of 7:30 on the 12th of June. So here we are. This is from BBC News. US whistleblower Edward Snowden will fight extradition. The ex-CIA employee who leaked secret US surveillance details has vowed in an interview to fight any attempt to extradite him from Hong Kong. Edward Snowden told the South China Morning Post, "I'm neither a traitor nor hero, I'm an American." It is his first interview since disappearing from his hotel room in Hong Kong on Monday. His leaks led to revelation that the US is systematically seizing vast amounts of phone and web data. So exactly what, whether you love him, hate him, that's exactly what Alex Jones has been saying for years. That's exactly what I've been saying for a few months now on this show, that everything is surveyed and it's an invasion of privacy. Mr. Snowden left Hawaii for Hong Kong shortly before the highly sensitive leaks surfaced. And you've got to ask yourself, what kind of authority figures are there? America's supposed to be, the American president's meant to be the leader of the free world, right? I mean, we all know he's a puppet controlled by the Bilderberg, Rothschild, Rockefeller, cabal cartel. Any listener of this show knows that anyway. But the false projection is that the American president's meant to be the leader of the free world. Well, what sort of leader of the free world spies on everyone and then tries to go after someone who exposes that system? You know what I mean? You can, wake up and smell the tyranny. I know listeners of this show already have, but it's starting to get into the mainstream now how bad things really are. And then we've got the independent NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden confirms he will stay in Hong Kong and resist US extradition attempts as well. So I just wanted to give you an idea of, I wanted to play that from a couple of weeks ago, and then they go, "Oh, don't worry, everything's fine, we're not spying on you," everything like that. And then it was revealed they're completely lying again. They are. Lie after lie after lie, and the people investigating them the lies are themselves. This ends in revolution, let's be honest. I hope it's peaceful, I hope it's lawful. The same sort of system is being brought in here into the UK. The Telecommunications Act 1996 is certainly covering the corporations that operate in the Western world, so there's no reason why this sort of thing can't be happening in the UK. I believe it is. And I believe there'll be a whistleblower at some point in the UK down the line. But at the moment, it's all happening in the States. I hope I hope the whole world does an Iceland and does a peaceful, lawful rebellion and just says, look, we've had enough of you stealing our money and spending it on things we don't want, be it invasion of privacy, illegal wars. So we'll just have to see. So that's the first half of the programme. I'm now going to completely switch gears now into something a bit more sort of light-hearted and something that I find extremely comforting and pleasant. It's the world of quantum mechanics. Now, don't be put off by hearing that. You think, "Oh, I don't understand science or anything like that." Well, the greatest and most effective prisons that we build for ourselves are in our own minds. I can't, I won't, I don't want to believe. So here's quantum mechanics. This isn't, I don't cover conspiracy theory on the show. I can cover conspiracy reality, but likewise on scientific views, I will point out when something is fact and when something is theory. Graham Hancock last week, it's theory, and he points it out it's theory. And later on, we'll finish off the interview, it's theory as well. This is scientific fact. It's from a documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know? I'm going to play you merely the results of their experiments that they cover on the show, not the documentary itself, because I don't necessarily agree with all the conclusions, but I want you to see the results for yourself, draw your own conclusions, make up your own mind. And there is one inevitable conclusion which I will cover after you've heard this piece itself. So this is a scientific experiment. It's known as the double slit experiment, and you can go and look this up online and see for yourself. Here we go.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act.
Now, this is much better to be viewed, obviously. So go onto YouTube, put in double slit experiment, you can see it for yourself. You know, I'm trying to put video into a radio format here, but hopefully you'll be able to get the gist of it, and I'll surmise at the end and go through what that conclusion definitively means.
If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit.
So he's firing marbles through a slit onto a screen, and behind that screen is as you'd expect, a pattern of sort of marbles hitting this wall behind the slit screen.
And hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right.
Fire marbles
now,
through 2 slits.
Let's look at waves.
And you get 2 lines.
The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the 2 tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing.
This is
so,
GCSE science.
When we throw things, that is, matter, through 2 slits, we get this, 2 bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through 2 slits, we should get, like the marbles, 2 bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger.
If you don't understand that, that's fine. That is quite a concept to get your head around. What you need to understand here is that scientists in the laboratory proved at the quantum level, matter is really weird. Right, that's the thing you need. It's not quite what we're taught it is at school. That's the conclusion here.
It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this.
Superposition? You don't know what that is? Well, the best way is just look it up. I can't really go on to it's beyond. I understand what it is, but I just wouldn't do it justice explaining. Superposition. The basic fundamental is that matter is not what we think it is. And remember, you know, it's we're all made up of atoms, right? Well, atoms are made up of nucleus and electrons. Well, if my fist here was the nucleus, then the nearest electron, the outer shell, effectively would be 20 miles away. In between that is empty space. 99% of every atom is empty space. 99% of everything we consider solid is empty, including ourselves. That's just a fact. We need to start examining quite how we think about the universe, and not from some kind of hippie, weird, new age thing. And I'm not knocking hippies or weirdos or new agers. I'm not knocking anyone. I'm saying we need to look at this from a factual perspective of science, and facts and science point to the fact that the universe is weird, man, and that's just a scientific reality. So let's continue.
So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of 2 bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
So let me just point out what that means. When it says it collapsed the wave function, it means it meant the electrons went from being a wave to a particle merely by someone observing it. Now let me just break down what that means. That means that a human being has an effect on the very substance of matter at the subatomic level. Another way of putting it, the electron was a wave, and then when it was observed by a human being, it became solid matter. Weird, I know, but that is an inescapable theory of quantum mechanics. Now you can go down the road of, well, everything's there, isn't it? Whether we're there or not, people live, people die, everything remains the same. And you can argue whether that's the fact that if there were no humans whatsoever, would everything collapse? I don't know. Are we lots of different consciousnesses, and does it need one consciousness for it to be solid? I don't know. Are we all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, as David Icke and Bill Hicks would say? I don't know. I don't have the answers. All I want you to know is that it is a scientific fact that by humanity observing matter, it makes it behave differently. The matter knows when it is being observed by a human being. The conclusion is therefore inescapable. It is impossible to passively observe the universe. Merely by existing ourselves as human beings, we affect the universe at the subatomic level. The universe, whatever it is you want to call it, knows that we're here. Whatever it is that collapses the wave function, you can call it the universe, karma, God, whatever. I don't know what the answers are. Whatever it is that makes the wave function collapse knows that humans are here, and that's what makes the particle behave differently. And that is the nature of consciousness. I don't know what it is. Call it a soul, call it consciousness, call it mind. I don't know. I merely know that it affects our consciousness, soul, mind, whatever you call it is, affects the very structure of matter at the subatomic level. And therefore, the conclusion is something knows we're here. And I find that very comforting, and I'd like to now... that's not just the extent to which our consciousness can affect the matter around us. Here's another experiment, and that's called the double slit experiment. Go look it up for yourself. That is the fundamental basis of quantum mechanics, and one of the reasons why so much money is being poured into CERN, the European study into subatomic levels and quantum mechanics to research all this kind of stuff. And I think that's a fact that should be spread more around this planet, because I think that's very comforting, very enlightening. But of course we know the agenda is to make humanity depressed and unhappy to sell them products. For example, you cannot sell a beautiful woman makeup. You cannot sell a woman that thinks she's beautiful makeup. You must make her feel inadequate first for her to buy the product. So the corporations have a vested interest in keeping us unhappy and feeling inadequate, because then they can sell us the products that they tell us are our solutions to those problems. So I'm not surprised that this sort of information isn't let out. I just wish it was. And by the way, the full movie, What the Bleep Blue Know, I don't agree with everyone on there, and I don't agree with its conclusion. Some of it's a bit weird, but in a weird way that cannot be sort of proven in a laboratory. I like stuff that could be nice, hard science that you can prove one way or another. So speaking of which, we're now going to go on to some of the experiments that were conducted onto water. And here we are. This is another clip from the movie What the Bleep Do We Know. Don't agree with everything, but the results themselves are fascinating.
Of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the four elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk.
Now, for those that cannot see, for those that want to look this up on YouTube, it's called Hidden Messages in Water. Dr. Masaru, spelled M-A-S-A-R-U, Emoto, spelled E-M-O-T-O. Put that into YouTube, you're bound to look this sort of up. Anyway, the water looks under a microscope as you'd expect it in the first one, but the second one, after receiving the blessing, that's the term they use, forms a wonderful, beautiful pattern. To continue.
Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the Chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
So, have a look for it yourselves, draw your own conclusions. There are many other experiments, they say, where the human thought process can affect matter at the molecular level, but we already know that it's absolutely guaranteed to affect it at the subatomic level. This is more proving it on a molecular level. Obviously, water is made up of atoms, not atoms itself, but we know that consciousness affects the makeup of what is an atom, i.e. the electrons. So it's how far up the scale of atoms, molecules, that kind of thing. How far does consciousness have an effect? But we know right at the very base of it that it does indeed. So with that in mind, let's now return to Dr. Graham Hancock talking about his theories of consciousness and the talk that was put up on TED, the talking, the mainstream sort of talking network forum type thing that they do shows, TED, and how his talk was removed after getting over 100,000 views. So this is Dr. Graham Hancock returning to talk about consciousness and illegal drugs, which I haven't taken. There you go. And again, like I said, a disclaimer on last week's show, I haven't taken them. I'm not telling you to take them. I don't know anything about it. I just want you to be aware of this person's point of view, and anything that the establishment wants to ban or censor, I like to play on this show. It's as simple as that, really. So do your own research, make up your own mind. I advocate nothing other than thinking for yourself.
That sacred realm, that unique source of biodiversity, the lungs of our planet, that beautiful garden of the Amazon jungle, as it comes under increasing threat, as it faces the most horrific destruction from the global industrial complex, as whole country-sized areas of the Amazon are slashed down and turned into soybean farms to feed cattle to fuel the hamburger industry. As all of this is happening, as this suicidal attack on the Amazon is taking place, out of the Amazon has emerged this ancient and sacred ceremony associated with a vine and a leaf. And this is the ceremony of ayahuasca. And in the ayahuasca visionary state, which can go very, very deep, people all around the world who've not been in contact with one another, who've not compared notes, are reporting encounters with an intelligent entity who they construe as a goddess. And more often we call her Mother Ayahuasca. And although she is not powerful in the physical realm, she operates in the realm of consciousness, and she believes that she can bring about change in the world through affecting and altering human consciousness. And now suddenly today, after thousands of years of being confined within the Amazon, just at the moment when the Amazon is under greatest threat, you can find ayahuasca ceremony available in New York, in Los Angeles, in Toronto, in Tokyo, in London, in Cairo. Anywhere you go in the world, even in the Arabian Gulf, you can in the countries of the Gulf, the Arab countries of the Gulf, like Dubai or Qatar, you can find ayahuasca ceremonies available. Stunningly, all around the world, this vine has traveled out of the Amazon and has presented itself globally in human culture and is having an impact on human consciousness. And you know, this way that she's seen as a goddess, as the mother goddess of the planet, ties in exactly with what you're saying about Gaia. And that is what many of us who've drunk ayahuasca are coming to feel that we're dealing with here. Yes. And you know, she's an extraordinary encounter. And I understand that people who have not experienced ayahuasca must feel very skeptical about what I'm saying. And all I would say to those people is, hold on a while. Go drink ayahuasca in the right setting, in the responsible setting with shamanic guidance. Yes. And that is available in the West as well as in the Amazon jungle. Go drink ayahuasca, have that experience, hold your judgment until you've had that experience, because it is extraordinary and it is transformatory, and it will work on you and on your own life and make you think about the harm and damage that you do to others, and it will work on your consciousness in relation to the planet as a whole.
Now, I do not necessarily agree with everything. His opinions are not those expressed by my radio station, and I would also like to say that all the views that we've expressed beforehand are not in any way attempts to contradict any type of religion or belief system. I think you'll find that actually they'll all kind of agree. I personally find when studying the religions, they all kind of seem to be describing the same thing, which is this nature of consciousness. So I find it, personally, I don't think it conflicts with any of the religions, but I would just like to say that I respect all religions that believe in sort of peace and love, and respect all those that wish to believe in whatever they like. I think they're all describing the same thing in my own personal opinion. And I would not advocate any of the use of what Graham Hancock is saying in any way. I'm just saying that he's an educated, informed person, and here's an opinion you won't hear on the mainstream that I'd like you to hear and make up your own mind on what he's saying.
Indeed, and this is a perfect setup. We're at the bottom of the hour. I'm skipping a station break tonight, Graham. I don't know if you've heard the Lifeboat Hour before, but it is a part of our lodge ceremony, our tradition here. But let this song into your heart, and let this...
Oh yeah, there's a skip here for a little bit before there's a little bit of a break, which I'll just skip on the YouTube thing for you. Let's see if we can pick up the
planet that we've been gifted, the incredible...
Here we are.
Inspiration for everybody. That was Florence and the Machine. The song is called Spectrum, and the hook line, in case you didn't hear, was Say My Name. Her name is Gaia.
I'm not
name is
necessarily
Gaia.
agreeing with all that
Say her
kind
name.
of stuff. I don't really agree with...
Let us strike those notes. Let us become harmonies. Let us
remember the sacred beauty of this planet that we've been gifted, the incredible opportunity to be born in a human body, to be able to make these fine distinctions between light and darkness, to learn and to grow and to develop in this garden of experience. What an opportunity we've been given, and how wicked and wrong it is of government and state forces and nameless bureaucracies to alienate us from our true destiny as spirits in growth in this garden.
There is
there's something I agree with.
For those of you out there listening tonight to the Lifeboat Hour, you're all involved in this, and there is some amazing prayer being let loose tonight. And let's go for it. This is Michael C. Rupert, Tracker of Truth. We're on for the second half of the Lifeboat Hour here on the Progressive Radio Network. My amazingly special guest and instant old friend.
And this is being re-aired on Beyond the News. Yeah, I'm sort of just taking and playing the YouTube clip up on here, and I think it must be some kind of new age radio show sort of type thing. But anyway, I just like Graham Hancock's work, most of it.
Is proof of it. Okay, so Graham, let's go back and let me throw something else into the mix for your discussion before I turn it back to you. Joe Rogan recently posted an interview with Eddie Wong, who had been a TED presenter. We've both been on Joe's show, and I think we both think very highly of Joe.
Joe's a fantastic guy. I love Joe. He's a wonderful man, and his show is really tremendous instrument of raising consciousness in the world today.
So what I see happening now is, speaking for myself, but I can feel you nodding your head already. I started as an investigative journalist more than 30 years ago, and you're right. We no longer face the same obstacles of consciousness that we used to have to deal with, that were so nauseating, so mundane, so heavy, so pedantic. That stuff.
Well, the big powers in those days could just shut down the individual in a second.
Yes.
By their control of the mass media.
Yes.
They could just absolutely decide what messages reached the public and what messages did not reach the public. And this is why the Internet is such a beautiful thing and such an amazing instrument for liberation despite all its problems, because the truth can no longer be hidden away in a dark corner. The Internet and the power of the human spirit and the drive that so many people have now for truth, for truth to be brought out, is served by the Internet in an incredible way.
One of the things
if I can just say, I mean, This has been brought home to me by the fantastic, heartwarming reaction that I have received following the censorship of my presentation by TED, and the incredible support. And I'm just so grateful for that support, and I want to put it on record to my social network communities on Facebook and to the Internet community around the world who've come to my rescue and my support and spoken out against what TED did. And just on that theme, I want to add, please, I have put up, because this is a very quick conversation about a very long and deep issue, I have put up all the links that will be useful to people who want to research this matter further on the first page, the opening page of my website, and that is simply www.grahamhancock.com, GrahamHancock.com. On the very first page, all the relevant links are there, and people who want to explore this further, who perhaps aren't familiar with with what we're talking about tonight will find the background information through those links.
Great. When you speak of the power of the internet, and yes, there is something alive and beautiful happening here, I was struck immediately by a number of links where new research in particle physics and quantum mechanics is absolutely, to use a word that David Wilcock uses, is totally coherent with shamanic teachings, and science and shamanism are approaching. And I refer specifically not only to the work of David Wilcock, whose book Source Field Investigations was another pivotal turning point in my life last year. But
and I wrote an introduction for that excellent book.
Okay, but also specifically the work of Greg Braden, who was an amazing inspiration. And I think you've made.
By the way, I just want to say that I'm familiar with David Wilcock's work, and I like some of it, but not. I wouldn't even say I'm a fan of above 50% of his work. But hey, I'm all about sort of putting different ideas out there, and people can listen to what they want to believe. But the quantum mechanics that they refer to is the experiments that I showed previously in the program.
Is he has compiled enormous amounts of peer-reviewed, overwhelming science that tells us essentially that consciousness, that frequency, determines our physical reality. And
exactly.
This is the ayahuasca message, right?
This is the ayahuasca message, and this is what the powers that be detest.
Yes.
And this is why my TED Talk was taken offline, because what I'm fundamentally challenging is a deeply rooted assumption within the power structures of our society about the nature of consciousness. Most mainstream scientists, not all, but most mainstream scientists, and they exert a stranglehold over the public thought about what is real and what is not real, take the view that consciousness is simply generated by the brain, that consciousness can be reduced to matter, that it is, in their language, an epiphenomenon of brain activity, that it's a kind of accident. For all the survival things that the brain does, we get this little extra bonus called consciousness. And they don't, and therefore, those who hold that view cannot possibly believe, for example, in life after death. They can't believe in the survival of death by consciousness, because they see consciousness simply as a product of physical activities. And they don't consider the possibility of another analogy, and I made this analogy in my talk, that the relationship of consciousness to the brain may actually be more like the relationship of a TV signal to a TV set. And in that case, when you destroy the TV set, the TV signal is still there.
Yes.
And I actually believe that consciousness is the fundamental property of the universe, as fundamental, more fundamental than gravity or the speed of light or electricity, that consciousness is really what it's all about. And consciousness is manifesting in physical form on this plane, on our planet Earth, but it is not limited to that form.
Here is another amazing synchronicity. Crazy Horse, the Lakota chief who was legendary, he was never photographed, and he had amazing magic. He had amazing power. Crazy Horse said that he spent more time in the spirit world through vision quests, through fasting, through his means. He spent more time there than in this physical world, because he said that was the real world and this is not.
And how absolutely right he is, in my opinion. How absolutely right he is. Look, we have these physical bodies. We have a physical job to do here on Earth. It is part of what we are. We can't deny that. We should celebrate the joy of our physical reality. But if we get lured into the illusion that that's all there is and that that's all that we're here for, if we get so deeply attached to that physical reality that we forget our real mission here, which is to grow and develop our spirit, our soul, then we are lost, because actually this physical world is the illusory world. Everything about it is temporary. Everything is in change. Everything is in flux. Nothing lasts. Nothing endures. There is a realm beyond this realm, which is real, and which we while we're locked in our physical bodies, can only encounter in altered states of consciousness, trance states, visionary states. It's in those visionary states that we get a glimpse of the eternal reality beyond this temporary and limited reality that we call physical life. So,
and again, I'd like to say that whether you agree with Graham Hancock or not, if he is right, what I think he is describing is what all the religions are describing. So far from if you happen to believe what he's saying, I don't think this should conflict with anyone's religious views necessarily. So I think you'll find that you'll agree on a great deal more than you would disagree on. So like I said, if you happen to believe what Graham Hancock is saying, and then I don't think it necessarily comes into conflict with any religious beliefs.
Crazy Horse was absolutely right. That is the real world, and that's ultimately what we need to focus our attention on, because when we die, that's where our destiny is. That's what we're going to. That's what we're living our lives to step out into. That's the next great adventure, and we need to be prepared for it. And there are so many structures in our society which are denying us that opportunity to prepare, and which are forcing us to concentrate on trivial and meaningless pursuits.
So let us now weave another colored thread into this beautiful tapestry that we're creating in our lodge tonight, which would be also the synchronicities that appear with Mayan and Hopi prophecies and many, many other indigenous prophecies. I'm sure we could talk about those for hours, not just Native American, but ancient prophecies that spoke to the changing of an age, the precession of equinoxes, to the ending of a 5,300-year cycle, and to a period in time which all of the ancient prophecies, I believe, share in common, which is that we are evolving now into a golden age when, to paraphrase, our consciousness, the loving consciousness, will begin to manifest more directly and more quickly as physical reality. Now, how did I do with that?
Very good, very good, and that's absolutely spot on, and that's exactly what we're in right now. And let's not forget that tremendous powers, dark forces that have been operating throughout human history are ranged against this birth and are seeking to prevent it coming about. But it will come about. All that is necessary is for all of us, everyone, every individual, to exert absolutely our right to sovereignty over our own consciousness, and to resist the control of those dark forces, those archons, as the Gnostics used to call them. And yes, you're right to draw attention to the Mayan and the Hopi prophecies. And of course, they received so much ridicule from the mainstream when 21st of December 2012 passed. And hey, guess what? The world didn't end, because the Mayan prophecies never said the world was going to end on the 21st of December 2012. They said what was going to happen then was the end of an epoch and the beginning of a new epoch, the very beginning of a new epoch, and we're at that cusp moment right now. And it's very interesting that the long count calendar, the 13 Baktuns of the long count calendar, ran for 5,126 years to 2012, and that's from 5,000 years ago until 2012, and those 5,000 years are exactly the period of the hegemony of the big state, the big government, the big corporation, the big centralized religion, all the things that have created the harmful conditions that confront us in the world today. And all of those things are breaking down. They're falling apart. They don't work anymore. The model is broken. The Maya were right. That era has come to an end, and a new era is being birthed, and it's our responsibility.
Now, I don't know anything about prophecies, because that's theory, isn't it? That's conspiracy theory. I don't really like to go down the road on that show, but I can tell you that, I mean, coincidence or not, I wouldn't like to say. Who am I to say whether it's coincidence or not? The world is waking up to the fact that we have politicians at the top of both parties, run by corporations, and are starting to come together with peace and love to overthrow this and build a better world. I can see that. Anyone that attended the Bilderberg Festival 6th to 9th of June would have seen that. So what Graham Hancock's describing, I mean, I know nothing of these prophecies. I don't really go in for that kind of thing. But again, I want to play this so you can hear his point of view, because, you know, you won't hear it on the mainstream.
as sovereign, independent, intelligent, free-thinking adults to make sure that that new era is filled with light and beauty, and that we throw off the control of these powers and these institutions that have sought for so long to force us to think in their way. Our
Banking
thinking
systems
is ours alone to decide.
The dialectic that is driving this rapid awakening of consciousness, I would liken to a sharp knife cutting through fabric. Is that as situations out in the world get progressively worse, more insane, more Bosch-like in the concept of hell, as those events start to come, people's consciousness are more available, and I think that's part of the edge that we have to carry as warriors, if you will.
What he's saying is the more we're scammed, the more we have our money taken in bank bailout to be used against us, the more debt we got into, the more austerity measures we get into, the more police state measures we get into, the more civil liberties taken away from us. I think that's what he's describing.
Because there are two issues going on here. At one level, on the global stage, I don't mean to cause offense, but the United States of America is a profoundly negative and deadly influence.
Yes.
But at another level...
But we know the United States... they're puppets of the Bilderberg Group, puppets of the banking cartel, Obama and all that kind of stuff, Bush. I mean, it's not coincidence that they continue this agenda. So when Graham Hancock says the United States, what he means is the powers that control the United States, which is the same that control our government over here in the UK, really, at the top level.
At the level of grassroots, at the level of the citizens and people of the United States, an amazing and beautiful thing is happening, which is not, and I feel emotional when I say this because it's not happening anywhere else in the world. There is an incredible awakening taking place in the United States.
It's beginning to happen in Britain. Like I said, I saw it at the Bilderberg Festival. I was there. A lot of people know what's going on now. And, it's people like you listening to this radio show telling other people, so I'd like to thank you for that. You're listeners of this show, you're part of this awakening that he's about to describe, and I thank you for it.
An incredible movement of the people to take power over themselves and to throw off these ghastly, horrific, controlling structures that have been misleading us for so long. And it's fascinating to me that in the very country which at the corporate and bureaucratic and state level has been connected with so much harm and damage, there is this flowering, beautiful awakening of consciousness and spirit in America. And I see it everywhere, and I see it more strongly in America than I see it anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's an amazing thing, and it's why I love to come to America and just see this beauty that's all around me, and the incredible intelligence and awareness and state of awakening of just ordinary people in their everyday lives who are refusing any longer to accept the bullshit that's been poured out at them for so long. And it's a wonderful thing. So I see in the United States the hope for the future, not from the state, not from the government, not from the big bureaucracies, but from the people at the grassroots level. Fantastic things are happening.
And here I think it is entirely appropriate to express gratitude in this launch to all of the First Peoples of Turtle Island, to all of the indigenous peoples who have, through some of the most horrendous persecutions, genocide, you name it, that have been applied, to all of the Native American peoples who have held these traditions alive and who are now stepping forward, just like the ayahuasca elders and the elders from South America, who have held this knowledge for us and who are stepping forward abundantly to feed us with their teachings and the things that they have held so sacred for so long.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to quote the late, great, wonderful Terence McKenna, another great American, that these people have kept the flame of a tremendous mystery burning when the rest of the world wanted to snuff it out. Yes. And thanks to them, the flame of that mystery is still alive, and we may warm our hands at it and learn and grow from it. You know, what shamans in the Amazon told me when I asked them to analyze the sickness of the West, the sickness of the great industrial and technological powers, they said it's quite simple. You've severed your connection with spirit. if you don't reconnect with spirit, and if you don't do it soon, you're going to bring the whole house of cards tumbling down around your heads and ours. And they see it as their mission to help us.
That's what we're here on the show to do, not in a shamanic way, but to break the constraints and educate people as to what's really going on in the world. I'd like to thank you for joining us. Check out our website, beyondthenews.co.uk. If you're in Eastbourne tonight, if this is going out on July the 3rd, you can catch me down a gig down in Terminus Road at BYOB's. I'll be doing some political comedy. Thanks for listening. Cheers. Good night.